And welcome everybody to the CUSA podcast roundtable. We have our next game of the week. It's week 3 already. Oh man, the college football season's already kind of flying by, but we do have another in CUSA matchup this week between the New Mexico State Aggies and the Louisiana Tech Bulldogs. I am Jake Gibson. I will be hosting this episode alongside our representatives for both the bus stop, Christian Molinard, and then Nathan of Go Tech Please Don't Die. Now, Nathan, if I'm not mistaken, you're technically a newcomer here to the roundtable, your first broadcast. So if you wouldn't mind, just give the people an introduction about who you are, where they can follow your stuff, and a bit about Go Tech.
Yeah, absolutely. And I promise I do have a last name too. I realize I didn't put that up here. But yeah, so we, along with Evan, who I think has been on the show before, we do Go Tech Please Don't Die. It's a Twitter account, it's a podcast, a blog. We have a shop and everything else too. But the idea started in 2014 where Tech was about to play University of Oklahoma. And we just kind of hoped that, no one would get hurt. We wouldn't get embarrassed too bad. And so we just kind of came up with Go Tech, Please Don't Die. And I think unanimously we said that they did die in that game, but we kind of kept that going forward where we kind of hope that not just that Tech wins, but, even in losses, sometimes you can say, well, the team performed well, or it didn't perform well, or the team just kind of died out there. And so that's kind of the idea that we have behind the energy that we bring to it. We try to be a little bit more, at times, analytical, but also bring some more humor to it. So I went to Louisiana Tech and graduated in 2017. Was starting there right in 2012 with the Sonny Dykes offense and almost beating Johnny Manziel and A&M. So my Tech fandom has seen some very high highs back then and has seen some very, very, very low lows as of recently as well.
Well, I think a lot of teams in CUSA can say some similar things. It's definitely an interesting conference as far as the ups and downs of its members. But let's start to get into this matchup a little, just talking a bit about both schools and where they're currently at. For New Mexico State's case, it's a close win over Tulsa. They're 2-0. All things considered, a good start for the Aggies. And for the Bulldogs, well, it almost feels like you're 2-0. A win over an FCS school, but a damn good performance against LSU. So, Christian, I'll start with you here. Just talk about a bit about that game against Tulsa after kind of sort of struggling against Bryant, only 19 points against what is a decent FCS school. You turn around and then take out a team from the American, and all of a sudden it's a pretty good start to the season.
Yeah, I think that game against Bryant was really kind of concerning, just how slow they started. And really the offense just was non-existent. The defense played really well. But then, Saturday going up to the press conference, kind of walking, you see Bryant's beating UMass, and everybody's kind of going, okay, maybe Bryant isn't so terrible as they painted that picture. I think the biggest question was going into last Saturday is, could they stop Tulsa's offense? I mean, they put up 500 yards against Abilene Christian. They won 35-7. So we're kind of seeing, could the defense duplicate it because the offense couldn't get going? And in the first half, it's the same thing. It's 3-0. Defense comes up with a red zone interception, and it keeps it 3-0 going into half, which was huge. But the offense flipped the switch. They started going into a quick game, a lot of curls, slants, hitches, anything that was under 3 seconds. The ball was just flying out of Logan Fife's hands, and that helped the offense. They actually took a step back in the running game. They're averaging under 2 yards per carry. So it's been kind of lackluster offensively. Defensively, they're playing at a level that I have not seen since maybe ever. Maybe the 90s was the last time I thought a defense looked this good in sync for them. Maybe Jerry Kill 2 years back in 2010, but when they had 10 wins. But this defense looks really on par with one of the best ones, and so that's helping them bail out right now. It's just, when is the offense going to get going? That's pretty much the biggest question for them at the moment.
And Nathan, Louisiana Tech's defense, I got to say, really impressed me with going into the real Death Valley and limiting the Tigers to only 23 points. Just talk about these first couple of games for you guys, shutting out Southeastern Louisiana and then giving the Tigers pretty much everything they could handle.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like my answer could be almost identical to the one that Christian just gave. Our offense has just looked downright horrible. We won that Southeastern game 24-0, but just to review the drive chart of that game real quick, we went 3 and out, or 4 and out, 3 and out, punt again, turnover on downs, another punt, finally a field goal, halftime, 2 touchdowns, and then punting the rest of the game. So we had a brief stretch in there where we the offense clicked and things were moving and we did well. But outside of that, it really didn't feel like we won 24-0. It felt like we barely escaped an FCS defeat. And so going into LSU, playing in Baton Rouge, the school we only get to play about once a decade, we've played them fairly well the last couple times we faced against them, both with one possession games in the fourth quarter. But no one expected this. Those teams that Tech played in 2009 and 2018 were not our best teams, but they were better than what we expect this year's team to be. And to go in and win 23-7 and keep LSU from running the ball especially was where I was especially shocked. They averaged 2.1 yards per carry. They've only done that twice in two other games against other opponents under Brian Kelly, both SEC opponents. So that's something that our defense has played at a level I haven't seen since the 1990s, because it's just incredible to watch this team and this defense lead for a school that when they've been good, it's because the offense has been good and the defense has been fine. We like to reminisce about that 2012 season that I've already brought up once, and I might bring up again at another point on the show. But that was a year where we had the number 3 offense, the number 127 defense. We could not stop our opponent from scoring, but our offense lit up the show. And so to see a team, and granted it's early this season, we've only played 2 games, but if this defense can be that good for the entire season, all of a sudden we go from, can we squeak to a bowl game, to are we actually conference contenders?
Oof. Saying the C word, huh? Contenders this early in the season? That's scary, especially with, Fan the Flames, Topper Talk, and 700 Pelham Road probably tuning in to this preview.
I'm not saying anything's definite yet. I did say this, we were 2 games into the season, but it just feels like the expectations may have shifted. And granted, they shifted during a loss, so you can't be, drawing too many conclusions from it. And so I'm really excited for this game this week against a conference opponent. Does our defense bring that same energy against New Mexico State as they would against the team that they probably all grew up rooting for? Or is this a one and done kind of performance by that defense?
You bring up an interesting point there, how 2 feels like defensive-oriented teams thus far match up against each other in a conference game this early in the season, which defense cracks first. But I did want to talk about the quarterback play for both schools, because it feels relatively different for New Mexico State. Christian, 479 yards and 3 touchdowns. Pretty electric start the stats look good, but then you look at the final scores, 19 points against Bryant, 21 against Tulsa. It almost kind of feels like it doesn't add up to what this guy's able to do in the air. But just talk about this guy and what he brings to the table there for the Aggies. Have they finally found their guy at QB?
It's a cautious optimism when you talk about Logan Fife, because you see some of the throws he has, some of the dots that he throws, he drops it in the bucket, hits guys going out of bounds, and he has really good ball placement. And then there's times where these routine passes are off, either with timing or the route is signaled wrong, or there's mistakes that are simple, and there's passes that are they kind of blow you away. I think they do have a guy that they really like. He's a great leader. He's got the locker room going behind him. The biggest struggle, I think, Jake and Nathan, is that Logan Fife doesn't have an offensive line right now. They are playing musical chairs with the offensive line. I mean, their left tackle, after Bryant was announced end of season with a torn ACL, so they moved their left guard to left tackle, and they bring in somebody new. And now the depth chart that came out yesterday is kind of a little different. So it's going to be 3 different games with not the same line. And so it was the biggest question going into the season was, can the line produce? Can they hold? They have a quarterback, they have a running back, they have wide receivers that are really talented. Can the line do it? Because a lot of these guys came in with little to no experience, and now it's even worse. But I think Fife is the guy. I don't think there's any doubt that they'll change or go anywhere into the depth chart. He's the leader right now, and he's playing with a lot of fire, and he's finding his groove. It's just, it comes down to, can the line buy him a little bit more time than 2 seconds?
And now for Louisiana Tech, Nathan. Well, I'm still just trying to figure out how this offense rolls. As right now, it feels kind of even between their passing and rushing game, more than I felt like it could be when Louisiana Tech had Bullock ready to go. But now you bring in this new quarterback. How do you help me here? Trey
Kukuk.
Kukuk, there you go.
Kukuk,
So you bring in Kukuk, and the stats don't really wow you. right now. So just talk about what you've seen from this guy and like how the shoes he has to fill with Bullock, who was your experienced QB.
Yeah, and I still believe that Bullock is probably the most talented pure quarterback still on the team because he is still on the team.
Yeah.
And the reason I started laughing, and I apologize if that messed you up, Christian, was I'm about to copy and paste a lot of what you just said again. It's offensive line play. It is the issue is that the offensive line for Louisiana Tech has become such a bad thing. I was trying to think of a decent enough analogy, but it's just become so bad that you can't play your best pocket passer quarterback at quarterback and expect him to live through the season. Bullock is a very good sit down, 5-second drop back throw kind of guy. But if he has 2.5 seconds to throw and you have to roll the quarterback out to create passing plays or do a lot of read option-y stuff, he can't be your guy because that's not his game. And so Trey Kukuk, that's what he excels at. He excels at running and throwing on the run and doing those rollouts and everything else that goes into that. The issue is he's not the best thrower of the football. He's struggled to look downfield. He has been accurate enough on the passes that he's actually thrown, but a lot of times it's just it takes off running because that's all he can really do because he doesn't have time for the receivers to get downfield. There's a bit of question of do we actually have the receivers that can create the open space for him to throw to too? So that part's maybe a little bit different than the problems New Mexico State has offensively, but that is something where we just don't know because we haven't seen the balls be able to be thrown. We did have the one touchdown pass at LSU late in the game that came off of Blake Baker, another run first kind of quarterback. He's more of a between the tackles kind of guy. I would actually kind of like to see him in some change of pace things where you bring him in almost in a Tim Tebow role back in the day, back at Florida. But he throws some pretty bad passes. I think it was a pass or two before that touchdown pass that was a blown coverage, so you can't really even give him too much credit for it. It was a pass that hit the LSU defensive back square in the hands, and he dropped it. And that's kind of par for the course for Blake. I think that he brings a more exciting brand of football than Trey does, but it is an issue of not turning the ball over. And that's something that Tech hasn't done yet, is throw an interception on the season. So in terms of who's the best quarterback, if we have got a good line, which we don't, but if we did, I want Bullock out there. But if we don't, then what do? I guess you go with Trey Kukuk, who hasn't turned the ball over and is able to roll out. But the team has said that they're addressing the situation and going to see which of the three quarterbacks will start as we enter conference play, and that no one's really won the job yet, which is always what you want to hear 3 games into the season, that you don't know who your quarterback is. Shoot. But it's a tricky situation here.
It's really interesting, by the way. The offensive line struggles for Louisiana Tech. They had a couple of guys in the CUSA watch list. I mean, Landon Nelson, Hayden Crispin, just to name a couple. So I'm really interested to see how that passing game can kind of evolve. And once they do get a set offensive line, how far that team can go. Now, let's try to stop this copy and pasting, Nathan. So I'll turn this next question to you first now. Being Louisiana Tech's running game and what they've been able to do, it feels like it's still pretty much up in the air for who could be running back number 1, if they even want to have a system like that. So take us through that class and some of the guys you see that could be some of the standout players there.
Yeah. For the past few years, it has felt like, okay, this is our running back 1. And by the end of the year, they are definitely not our running back 1. Whether that's just through, sometimes it's injury, sometimes it's through, a freshman going off and going, okay, well, we got to keep giving this guy the ball. But coming into this season, Amiri Wiggins was our big running back, our not big, large, but big as in the kind of run share you expect him to have. And he's carried the ball so far this season 7 times for 4 yards. Not exactly what you're looking for out of your top guy. We did bring in a couple transfers. Clay Thevenin has been our leading rusher, 83 yards. He has the only rushing touchdown on the season as well. I expect him to have some sort of game. But again, when you don't have the offensive line that can protect downfield passing, then you're just going to have the defense stack the box, and whether you're throwing short or running the ball, they're going to be prepared for either. So it again comes down to the offensive line. It comes down to, can we figure out some way to get some sort of downfield threat in the passing game that will open things up in the run. Fred Robertson, another running back, has looked good on a couple kick returns I think kick, maybe punt, but we've got talent at running back. I think that's the biggest thing for me is I feel like we have a lot of running back talent, but you can only do so much as a running back if you're getting hit 2 or 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage.
And Nathan, I should say Christian, I kind of gave Nathan hell there for not having a consistent running game and a leader in that unit, but New Mexico State's coming into this game with even less success running the ball, only 117 yards and 1 touchdown. Talk a bit about the struggles there for the Aggies. Is it a combination of maybe, I don't want to say lack of talent, but maybe a lack of direction for the running game? Maybe the offensive line just isn't helping them as much as they could be, or is it a bit of both?
It's going to go back to the offensive line again, Jake, to be honest with you. Dijon Stanley and Kadarius Callaway are both guys that are P4 transfers. Those were guys that were stuck behind the depth chart. They're fast. Dijon Stanley clocked in at 23 miles an hour at his top speed. They have the ability. Watching a little bit of the all-22 that we were getting, there's nowhere for them to go. I mean, combined, they're literally splitting carries. Callaway has 17 carries. Stanley has 15 carries, and they're both right around 40 yards each. Then Isaiah Redison has 5, and he's the third down back that we expected in camp. That's how the depth chart would go. And they wanted to do like a thunder and lightning with Stanley and Callaway. They wanted to use Callaway as their bigger guy, kind of, 1st and 10, get it to 2nd and 5, and then open up the playbook. But they haven't been able to do any of that. And it's just the offensive line. The line of scrimmage is going backwards, and there's nothing you can really do. And the gaps that they're supposed to hit, they're clogged up. It's almost comical at this point that the leading rusher against Tulsa was the quarterback. It was Logan Fife, who had a 10-yard rush, and that literally put him as the number 1 rusher late in the third quarter. So it's all on the offensive line right now, and they know that. Isaiah Reed, who's my co-host, he still has connections inside the locker room. They're addressing it with players-only meetings. They're trying to mix up. They're trying to switch concepts, according to Isaiah. They're trying to see if they can go from maybe zone concepts to gap concepts and switching things to make it a little bit more simpler on the younger guys. But that's it. Callaway and Stanley are guys who are talented, fast. They know how to play. They came from Cal, one came from Kentucky. They know what they can do. It's just they need some holes to run through.
Now, this is going to get me excited here, just looking at the defenses that are heading into this matchup, especially because of how much you guys are saying the offensive lines have struggled for both squads. Yeah. The defenses, it sounds to me like this could be a field day for two very well-built defenses that have similar stats to each other in interceptions, sacks, and forced fumbles. We'll start with Christian here again. Just talk a bit about what's making the defense click so far, not just against an FCS squad, but against an equal group of 5 member in Tulsa. Just what's made that defense work so far?
It's the leadership they brought back. Sano and Piu and Tyler Martinez at linebacker. Gabe Patterson, who was part of the team, left to Utah State, came back. They have leadership across the board. The thing that was struggling with them last year was their secondary was horrid. So they really put a premium on going and getting guys to transfer in. So they kind of left the front 7 sort of untouched. I mean, Ezra Christensen was another guy who came in on the defensive line, but there wasn't too much that they had to tweak with the front 7. It was really the secondaries, and they put a premium on that, and that's showing up. Coach Morris, Joe Morris, was at Sam Houston for many years, and you know how good that defense was. And last year he was trying to do more with a lot less, and this year he's a lot more confident and a lot more comfortable. But right now it's the leadership. Tyler Martinez, guys, has a huge club on his wrist right now. I mean, he supposedly broke it, was going to need surgery, was going to be out for some weeks. They went in. They said, hey, he can play with this as long as it's wrapped up, and he's chosen. He was not supposed to play last week, but he's chosen to club up and kind of go through, and that sort of leadership and that optimism around the defense is having them feel a little bit more connected, and they're synchronizing. You could see it in scrimmages leading up to the season. These guys were like synchronized swimmers. They were just moving as a unit, and that's really been the strong suit. For me, Jake and Nathan, I've called this a mirror matchup. Literally, La Tech and NMSU are looking at themselves in the mirror. They're playing what they've seen so far. Bad offense, good defense. That's what we're going for this weekend.
No, that's looking in the mirror. I love that analogy, and looking at what you guys are saying, I absolutely believe it. For Nathan, I have to know, what was the secret ingredient to limiting LSU to 23 points, 10 in the first half alone? What did the trick for them?
It's our linebackers, just to kind of spoil it right away. Our linebacking play has been out of this world. Leota, Fields, and Mason have all been, they're our leading tacklers on the year so far this year. They are, which you kind of sometimes expect out of a linebacking crew. But I want to point at Mekhi Mason here for a second. Just statistically, in the NCAA, he currently ranks 18th in tackles, and this is the entire NCAA. 9th in stops, a stat I actually haven't heard of until I saw this graphic. 5th in sacks as a linebacker, and 1st in tackles for loss. A lot of those coming against Southeastern, but a fair amount coming from LSU as well. The biggest thing, the thing that gave me the most hope for the season against LSU actually kind of came late. I don't think any of us were expecting us to win this game at any point during it, but LSU has one of these drives down the field. We get called for penalties. It's an SEC field, SEC refs, whatever. And you get down, and they end up with the ball at the Tech 3 1st and goal. They have a 1-yard run, a 0-yard run, and another 0-yard run, and end up settling for a field goal. And granted, that's a time when teams start putting substitutes in, but LSU didn't. Nussmeier, their quarterback, played the entire game. This is also when the G5 schools that play these SEC opponents start to get tired because they've been on the field the entire time. And these SEC schools have deeper benches full of more talent. And yet Tech was still able to stop them at this point in the game. It comes to swarming the ball. It comes to all of that. Our defensive backs also looking pretty great at times. I'd still think about an LSU pass that was broken up in the end zone by Jakari Foster, one of our defensive backs, 2nd and goal. Just an amazing all-out effort. Again, I think it comes down to, can they bring that energy into a game against New Mexico State? It's at home, returning to your home crowd after a game against LSU where you kind of showcase yourself a little bit, I think will help. But I am continuously impressed by this defensive group, especially because we have Luke Olson coming in at defensive coordinator from Jacksonville State, who, when I was reading about it right after we announced the hiring, Jacksonville State fans were very happy he was leaving and seemed to be ready to wash their hands of him and happy that they didn't have to pay to fire him. But so far, he's continued what has been previously laid as the groundwork and has brought together a really good defensive unit.
How rockets do those games get at Ruston, Louisiana? Like, what can Christian and the New Mexico State faithful expect from the crowd there at Ruston?
Not as much of an environment as I would like, sadly. Attendance has been down, as it kind of has been a lot across a lot of college football. It is an environment that, while the new university president, who I think took over a year and a half ago has really been putting more emphasis on getting student involvement and relaying some of the groundwork and the bridges that have been burned over the years, that takes time to do. And it takes time to kind of rebuild that fan base. It is also in Ruston, Louisiana, not exactly a populous area. A lot of times alumni will drive over from Shreveport or Dallas, but that's still hours of a trip and everything else that goes into that. When the team is good, you get attendance. And when it's not, you get the faithful, but you don't get everybody. Again, this is my third reference of 2012. It felt like we were selling out stadiums. I remember I was in the band on the field during pregame, and hearing the crowd coming in and yelling and everything was just insane. It was a lot of fun, and it was a raucous environment. And then, even during the Skip Holtz Bowl years, that started to die as the team got less and less impressive to watch, even if they were winning games. So I would expect occasional, it's not like it will be an empty stadium, but it won't be quite as full as I would like it to be.
So that leads us finally into the matchup between these two teams here. And I just wanted to ask you two, and then let you guys kind of go at it afterwards. Whoever wants to start the convo first, have at it. But who do you think is more ready to take on a CUSA opponent this early? From Louisiana Tech's perspective, you take on a team that is below your caliber in Southeastern Louisiana, and then the number 3 team in the nation at the time in Louisiana Tech, and you impressed a lot of people. For New Mexico State's case, it's again an FCS opponent, but then a group of 5 member that, well, it's a group of 5 member. It's certainly going to be more up to New Mexico State's caliber than taking on a power conference team. That's for later in the season against Tennessee. So whoever wants to go first, I'll leave the floor open to whoever. But who's more ready to take on a CUSA opponent right now?
I'll go first, and I'll say that it's been a steady climb, right? Start off with an FCS, start with a group of 5 where you're the underdog at home, and then Louisiana Tech. Like, it's been a steady, litmus test every single time. And I think right now that they feel confident. I think looking back before the season started, when many people were talking about it, was like La Tech would be a sort of where the season would go, right? Because nobody expected them to beat Tulsa. They expected them to be 1-1, and a lot of people had them coming out of the La Tech after 3 games, 1-2. Now that they're 2-0, they don't have that pressure, right? The schedule is more favorable to them early on in the season than it is in the back half, and so they needed to start off fast. I think right now the locker room is more confident, just having ears to it. They're more confident than they were 2 weeks ago, but it's a cautious optimism. Like, they're trying very hard. The leaders are trying to say, hey, we're in a good spot, but we can't let this get to our head. So I feel like they're in a good position no matter what happens on Saturday, because a lot of people had them 1-2 or maybe even 0-3. They just didn't have a lot of faith. So right now, for them to kind of pass the litmus test against Tulsa and take care of that and mature from one half to another, this is a slow build, and it's the right kind of build for a team that you really didn't know what you were going to get out of them. If they were somehow to come 3-0, it'd be the first time since 1999. The first time that they started 2-0 was 2014. So it's been a while since they've had good starts at the beginning. Now, to preface that, when they went 2-0 in 2014, they went 2-10. They didn't win a single game after that. They kind of just fell off the wagon a little bit. When they went 3-0 in 1999, they actually did really good and went to a bowl game. So that kind of shows you how New Mexico State hasn't been in these positions too long. They haven't started off the seasons too great. And so right now they feel good about everything that's going on except for the offensive line, which I've hammered quite a lot. But I think everything has been a slow, gradual, okay, this is the next level, and this is the next level. So it seems like they're taking the steps that they need to. So I feel like they're in a good spot to face La Tech on Saturday.
Yeah, and I think that we don't have an idea of how good Tech is the issue, is that we don't have this steady climb. We have, like you said, the FCS, then the SEC powerhouse. As a fan, I'm extremely excited to see this game. So I know how good, almost as a litmus test of, okay, against teams that aren't expected to do very well in the conference, but at least in the conference, how do we look? And I mentioned a couple times that intensity against LSU, can we bring it? And especially when our next game is against Southern Miss. And that is a rival for the school. Granted, do players care about those kinds of rivalry games against teams they don't face very often? Who knows? But I imagine a lot of the Louisiana kids have friends or know people that went to Southern Miss more than they know people that went to New Mexico State. So that game is probably a little more circled on the calendar than the New Mexico State game is. So if there is such a thing as a trap game in conference play, maybe this is it for Louisiana Tech, where you feel really good even after you lost by 16 against LSU, and then you've got Southern Miss coming up a week in advance. But at the same time, this team has looked better defensively than I think they even thought they would. And if the offense, if we can get some sort of consistency going, which is a really big if, because we haven't had either consistency or explosiveness out of this team, I think that they're ready for conference play. I'm more ready to see how this team plays when it comes to conference play.
I mean, honestly, just to kind of piggyback off of that, Nathan, it would kind of tell you for New Mexico State where they stand. Even if they lose, if they're competitive to La Tech, like right now they're minus 10.5, which I think is Vegas giving La Tech credit for how they played against LSU. I don't know that it'll be that big of a spread. I think it's going to be a close game either way. But if they keep it close, if they keep it competitive, then you look, instead of saying this is a 4-win team, this could be a 6-win team. They could possibly go to a bowl because they're doing better than expected. So I share that sentiment that I'm probably more excited to see the game play out, just to kind of know more or less where NMSU might land the rest of the way.
Some good points all around here. 10 and a hook. Oof. That is a crazy spread here. I just noticed. I I'm now getting a little intimidated here. I'm maybe too well shaved compared to you guys here, rocking the beards. My gosh, absolutely love to see it here. I'll open it up to another question here. What is the one thing that both teams need to avoid in general? It could be mental mistakes. It could be actual mistakes like penalties. I know both teams have kind of committed quite a few, 17 for La Tech. And then, I just had it here, 16 for New Mexico State. So pretty even as far as those kinds of errors. But what are the biggest things that both squads need to avoid instead of the things they need to do right, which is basically just let their defenses do their thing?
Illegal formation for NMSU. They had 4 on Saturday, which was absolute drive killers. And 3 of them came off of big plays, like momentum swingers where it could have, instead of being 21-14, could have been 28-14, could have maybe been 24-14. Like, they literally shot themselves in the foot 3 times off of big, 20-plus yard gains. And Coach Sanchez mentioned in the press conference immediately after that, those sort of mental errors about lining up something so simplistic cannot happen. I mean, holding, happens every play, or pass interference happens when it's a deep ball, but lining up should be one of the most routine things that you do as an offense. And that's where it came down to. I don't mind the pass interference calls. I don't mind the holding calls. I really don't mind those things because they just happen so often, but lining up and executing a play should be one of the most routine things. And they had 4 of those. I think just doing the simple things well would be one of the things that they just have to focus on and avoid the dumb penalties that kill the drives.
Yeah, for Tech, you mentioned the 17 penalties. 12 of those came against LSU, and often when playing an SEC opponent on their home field, like you usually do, I don't put too much credence into the penalty count there. If we were looking at season-long statistics from previous years, I may just get rid of those games entirely, home cooking and whatnot. It's just kind of par for the course. Some of them are real penalties, don't get me wrong. It's not like every penalty was made up, but I'm not going to be too worried about that unless we see, another 12 on Saturday night in Ruston. What I think Tech needs to do, especially if this looks to be a defensive game, and not to put all the pressure on one guy, but our punter, Boyette Chance, that's his hyphenated last name. He has had some amazing punts. He has had some, down at the 1. He has had some, fair caught at the 5, that kind of thing. But he's also had at least 2 shanks against LSU early. I think one in the first half, one in the second half. And that really was hard to come back from when you're playing a team like LSU. Again, not expecting to win, but those are the things that can't happen if, you win a game. You mentioned the line being 10.5. I'm not sure if either of these offenses can score 10 points in this game. Yeah. So to get to 10.5, one of the teams do. So that's my concern, is that if a punt is shanked or something like that goes wrong in special teams, all of a sudden you have a field flipped for the other opponent that can kick a field goal fairly easily, even if they can't reach the end zone. And the points may especially matter in a defensive battle. So punting is my concern. Yeah,
I would say that Max Dean, the punter for NMSU, has been easily the MVP with his punting. There's one thing about NMSU that they're going to bring his kickers. The field goals were good from at least 60 in warmups. So you're right, Nathan. If he shanks one and they're across the 50, they're probably already in field goal range. When this game could be 9-6 or 6-3, it could be something ugly of the sorts. When those things matter the most, especially with NMSU having strong kicking, if that happens, you can almost automatically put 3 on the board. So that's a legitimate concern on your end.
Without a doubt. Shout out the punters. I didn't even have that on my planner that we'd be getting into the punters here, but hey, the CPR works in mysterious ways here in the round table. So just kind of continuing here. You've mentioned the struggles of the offenses here, but what is the one part of both teams' offense that you think can actually do well against a specific part of the opposing team's defense? Again, I'll open it up.
It's not going to be running the ball. They cannot run the ball against La Tech. I don't think it's going to have to be the quick passing game. I mean, New Mexico State has size. They have Broderick Malone, who's a freshman. He's 6'5". Donovan Fappel, he's got some size to him. He's 6'1". So they do have some big body receivers that's where they're going to win the game, is trying to use their body to box out like basketball players. I think that's where they can succeed a little bit, but it's definitely not going to be the running game. It's going to have to be using their bodies to their strengths for jump balls, quick passes, and boxing out. That's probably where they're going to try to move the ball. I'm sure La Tech saw the film of the second half of Tulsa and says, we have to stop that, but it's easier said than done when you've got a guy who's 6'5" and can just box you out like if he's in the paint. So I don't know. I don't have faith in the running game, but I do have faith in either winning those jump balls or winning those slants offensively, if I had to put a vote to it.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I'm going to pick the run game. I think there's too much talent in this backfield for Louisiana Tech to be held down for too long. Right. They struggled against Southeastern, beginning of the year. You're figuring out your run game. You're figuring out your run blocking packages. Then you're playing LSU. No one's going to have success against LSU running the ball. So I think that, I say that someone probably will. And watch Southeastern when they play LSU in a couple of weeks. They'll have success running the ball against LSU somehow. But I just think there's too much talent in this running back room. And especially when the passing offense has been an even worse struggle. I'm not as convinced that New Mexico State's run defense, although the stats look good so far this year, I'm not as convinced that they're as strong as Tech's run defense is. And I think that that's something that Tech may be able to exploit a little bit by practicing against their tougher run defense, may be able to build some skills to help them against NMSU.
Some good points there. All right, we're starting to close up shop here. I'd like for you all to give me a name that the CUSA faithful need to watch out for on both offense and defense. It could be a player that's already made a big impact, or someone that's due for a big impact here. Starting with Christian, who are some names on the Aggies that fans will really need to keep an eye on against La Tech?
I mentioned Donovan Papel. He's had 2 really good games, but TJ Pride, man, I'm waiting on him to kind of come around. Pride had a really good sophomore year last year. He's got to jump onto the scene a little bit. I think people have been keen in on him at wide receiver, but I'm waiting on him to kind of explode and come up with some more big plays. Papel had a nice touchdown last week, and I know Pride's been involved, but I'm just waiting for him to have a takeover game. Defensively, it's got to be Tyler Martinez. He's the captain. He's the linebacker. He's made some plays already with the club. He had the tip ball in the end zone with his club hand. I think he tried to one hand intercept it and realized he had the club on, but that went for an interception. But he's been a disruptor in the backfield, a disruptor in the secondary, and he's the vocal leader. So that guy's going to really make a big impact. But if I can name one more, it's Ezra Christensen on the defensive line. He's been a disruptor, and he's put a ton of pressure on lines. He's made it really tough. He kind of absorbs 2 or 3 guys with him because he's just a big time dude in the middle. So those are some names I think that would stand out come Saturday.
Yeah, and for Tech offensively, running the ball, it's by committee. I think that it's hard to kind of give a name out here without just listing off the running back room. So knowing who will pop off is probably the most difficult part of this. Even though he's been held in check so far, Amiri Wiggins, last year's leading rusher, I think will finally find some groove at some point this season, hopefully this week. Receiving, Eli Finley is our leading receiver. He's the tight end. Spot that our former head coach Skip Holtz, I don't think, knew that he had on the roster. So it's nice to see a tight end be used in the game. And 8 catches through 2 games is nothing really to pride yourself over too badly. But another big guy, like you said, boxing out, that's the kind of thing that Eli Finley can do. And when you're playing a lot of times the smaller defensive backs, especially at the G5 level, size can matter a lot. And also when you're not able to pass the ball down the field, tight ends can be more utilized as well. Defensively, I mentioned the linebackers as a whole. Colby Fields was the name that we really wanted to watch going into this year, along with Jacob Fields, a defensive back. So there are 2 Fieldses. So if you just hear great play by Fields, there is, 2 of them. So, but it's hard not to shout out again, Mekhi Mason, who is again leading college football in tackles for loss at this point this season. That needs to be repeated at least 3 or 4 more times in the next hour by at least somebody. So I guess I'll do it.
Damn. Well, okay then. Alrighty, gentlemen. It's been a fun show thus far, but I think we need to start to wrap up here with a very important question. First of all, before we even get to that, you guys are picking your teams to win this, right? It feels like a coin flip. Nathan, you're going with La Tech.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Christian, you're going with
Yeah.
New Mexico State, yeah?
Yeah, of course.
Good. So here's the question then, and I'll first ask this to Nathan, then I'll ask it to Christian. Nathan, Louisiana Tech will beat New Mexico State because
they don't allow any points to be scored. Tech has now had a streak of 2 games played at the Joe Ice Stadium where they've not allowed the team to score any points, and that goes back to last year, granted. But the run defense is just too good. The pass defense is good enough that I think that they're able to either shut out or maybe allow a field goal in there. But I think that that's going to be the key. The offense figures something out, whether it's running the ball, whether it's passing. Really, my biggest concern is going to be turnovers offensively. And as long as they can keep those in check and the defense plays at its lights out level that it has so far this season, I think that this is a low scoring game, but not a particularly close game.
Christian, New Mexico State walks into Nathan's trap and takes Nathan's trap because
Defense will create turnovers that will lead to field goals, not touchdowns. Like I said, the kicking game is really strong. They're going to generate some turnovers just because they've done it in every game. Their pass defense has been above. Like I'm talking, this is a championship level defense with a peewee offense, and the defense is going to continue to bail out the offense, and the offense won't be able to move the ball. As Nathan said, La Tech has a really good defense, but those turnovers will come with good returns. Their special teams will generate some returns, and those field goals will probably make the difference. It'll be a close one, but it'll be coming down to special teams and turnovers.
All righty, gentlemen. Any final thoughts before we wrap up here about this matchup? All things considered, should be a pretty fun one.
I'd say the first to 12 might win. That's about it.
12?
First to 10, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, field goals all day for NMSU. I don't know if they can get into the end zone.
Tech did lose a game to Sam Houston last year, 6-9 or something like that, 9-3 even maybe.
It might be something like that this time around too.
My gosh! So what you're saying is, I don't even know what the over/under is, but slam the under is what you're telling me.
Oh yeah, if you can get NMSU plus 10, because I just don't know if it's going to be that bad. It would have to be 10-0, but I would hit the plus and I would hit the under to be honest with you.
Wow, it's amazing that I got all this amazing insight on Louisiana Tech and New Mexico State. I'm not even going to be able to use it this season because FIU doesn't play either team alongside UTEP, so we don't have to go to the West Coast at all, which is kind of nice. But alrighty, gentlemen, thank you so much for hopping on this game of the week preview as we get closer to this matchup between the New Mexico State Aggies and the Louisiana Tech Bulldogs, which is scheduled for kickoff at 7:30 Eastern. You can watch it. Where can you watch it? ESPN Plus.
ESPN Plus, yeah.
And there you go. Should be a great one over there in Ruston. So week 4 comes around, and just a spoiler alert, your boy might actually be the guest this time around alongside the Feathers and Field Goals podcast as FIU and Delaware, I think, is the only full CUSA matchup next week. Could be wrong on that. But again, thank you, gentlemen.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks for having me, man.
All right. We'll see you next time and the CUSA Podcast Roundtable.